So we are, I lost track. We're in part 6, part 7, I don't know. We're like far into the series right now. The series is called Heaven and Hell, a biblical survey. And this whole series is built upon your questions and your curiosity. So if you're interested, here is a QR code. If you have questions, you've been asking some great questions. As a matter of fact, last week and especially this week is also based off of a question that you asked. And it didn't come in the form of an email or, the filling out the survey. Somebody just pulled me aside and said, hey, Kotz, are you going to talk about Matthew chapter 25, 14 through 30? And I said, now we are. So this is what we're doing. Next week, it's actually a two-parter because next week somebody sent in a survey asking about the verses following this one. So it's going to be chapter 25, 14 through 30, and next week we'll do the rest of the chapter. I don't know if you guys know this, but I think I mentioned it before. We're actually planning to do a study through the entire book of Matthew starting the end of this year. So you'll probably hear me preach the same sermon like in about a year or two. Hopefully by then you've forgotten, because you don't remember what I spoke on like last week, right? So perfect. Yeah, I'll just keep reusing my old sermons. Okay, at the end of 14 through 30, there's a line in there that I think a lot of people associate with hell. And that line is this: weeping and gnashing of teeth. Have you guys heard of this? The end of this story ends, well, it's a parable, and Jesus tells a parable, and at the very end he says, oh, that person will be sent to a place of weeping and gnashing of teeth. And everyone's like, there it is, verse about hell. I don't know where that came from. In Christianity, 2,000 years ago until recently, no one's ever associated the phrase weeping and gnashing of teeth with hell. So I don't know how that came about. I don't know the etymology. Is it etymology? Is that the right word? The source of that. So what we're going to do is, like we always do this throughout the series, first thing we're going to do is, number one, we're going to read through the verse that talks about, in this case, hell. And then when we realize that it's not about that, we're going to learn, since we're reading that verse anyways, number two, let's learn the intended lesson of those verses. So let's take a look at Matthew chapter 25, verse 14 through 30. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to read through it first and then talk about what we think it means. And then we're going to go back to the top, from verse 14, and study it together. Is that cool with you guys? All right, let's do it. All right, verse 14. Again, this is Jesus speaking. Again, and by it, if you look at the context, it is talking about the kingdom of God. Jesus is talking about, what does it look like to have heaven on earth? How would I recognize it? Who's in it and who's not in it? He's like, that will be like a man going on a journey who called his servants and entrusted his wealth to them. You're probably familiar with this story, maybe, okay? So the story starts off with a rich guy, okay? Let's see what he does. Oh, there you go. To one, he gave 5 bags of gold, to another 2 bags, and to another 1 bag, each according to his ability. Then he went on his journey. Now, if you read some of the older translations of this story, maybe the word you see there is not bags of gold, but talents, right? So for a long time, I thought, this is about like using your skills, like if you know how to juggle, you could juggle for Jesus, and right, and somebody has 5 talents. This is one of those weird situations where the translator made an odd choice. The word for this amount of money is called talenta in Greek, and they decided, hey, let's just transliterate it. No, it's basically a lot of money. It's like, think of it like a bag of gold. So even if you have just 1 bag of gold, it's considered to be enough to last you for the rest of your life, because that's a lot of money here. So even though this guy got only 1, he has enough to live for the rest of his life. This master, he has a lot of resources. Let's keep going. The man who had received 5 bags of gold went at once and put his money to work and gained 5 bags more. So also the one with 2 bags of gold gained 2 more. But the man who had received only 1, he went off, dug a hole in the ground, and hid his master's money. Okay, After a long time, the master of those servants returned and settled accounts with them. The man who had received 5 bags of gold brought the other 5 and said, look at this, master. You entrusted me to 5. We'll see, I've gained 5 more. Good job. His master replied, well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful with a few things. And he's being very modest here. It's like, few things, 5 bags of gold is a lot, right? He's like, yeah, you've been so good with the little that I gave you. I will put you in charge of many things. Come and share your master's happiness. Or in some of your translations, come and enjoy your master's joy. Then the second guy, the man with 2 bags of gold, came also. He said, Master, you've entrusted me with 2 bags. And he follows the same script here. See, I've gained 2 more. His master replied, well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful with a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Come and share your master's happiness. Whippy. Third guy, let's see what he does. Then the man who received 1 bag, Master, I knew that you are a hard man, harvesting where you have not sown and gathering where you have not scattered seed. So I was afraid and went out and hid your gold in the ground. See, here it is. What belongs to you, here it is. I kept it nice and pristine. Next. His master replied, you wicked, lazy servant. You knew that I harvest where I have not sown and gather where I have not scattered seed? Well then, you should have put my money on deposit with the bankers, so that when I returned, I would have received it back with interest. Then, so I guess there's like another person there. So the master talks to this other person and says, hey, you, take the bag of gold from him, the third guy, and give it to the one who has 10 bags. For whoever has will be given more, and they will have an abundance. Whoever does not have, even what they have will be taken from them. And so here's the line that we've all been waiting for. And throw that worthless servant outside into the darkness, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Oh. So he went to hell, right? That's right? I don't know. Well, here's a stick figure version of this story. So here's a master, and he has 3 servants, okay? And he's like, I'm feeling pretty good. I have to go somewhere. So next slide. I'm going to give you guys some gold, right? 5, 2, and 1. Okay. And it says right after that, he's like, see you later. Next slide. So he takes off. And while he's gone, it says immediately, the first guy, next slide, the first guy, he takes his 5 and he makes it into 10. The second guy takes his 2, makes it into 4. But the last guy, I'm going to go bury it, not going to do anything with it, right? And then the master comes back. And then the story goes, he goes to, we'll call him A, B, and C. He looks at servant A. Servant A says, hey, look, I took your 5, made it into 10. Next slide. Ding. Good job. Next guy. Look, I did the same thing. Ding. Good job. Third guy, it's like, these guys, I did something even better. I hid it, and I brought it back to you just the way you left it. Survey says, no, doesn't work. Now, if the story ends there, that's like, okay, that's interesting, right? But it doesn't end there. The story ends with this. The master looks at the third guy, servant C, and says, next slide, it's like, well, in that case, I'm going to toss you out, and you're going to end up here, right? Like, does this make sense to you? Like, if you think this is a verse about hell, right? We think that this is a verse about, next slide. If this is a verse about hell, then we think what this is saying is this. People who don't use God's resources responsibly will suffer in hell. Have you heard that sermon before? Probably not here, right? But like other churches, you probably heard that, right? Because that's, if you were to take it at face value, that's what it seems like Jesus is teaching here, right? Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to go back to the beginning of the story, and we're going to break it down. We're going to study it verse by verse, and then discover what Jesus' intended message here is. Okay, here we go. Let's start from verse 14. Again, it, kingdom of God, will be like a man going on a journey who called his servants and entrusted his wealth to them. Okay, so here's my stuff. This is like a topic sentence. It tells you what the rest of the story is about. Next slide. To one, he gave 5 bags of gold, to another 2 bags, and to another 1 bag, each according to his ability. Now, does this seem fair to you? Like that guy gets 5, this guy gets 2, and that guy gets 1. Well, according to the way Jesus told his story, it is fair. Why? Because he doesn't just blindly give big amounts of money to whoever is around him. He basically says he gives it to them each according to his ability. So the master understands that wealth can corrupt a person. And so he knows these people so intimately that he's like, I know you. I know you can handle 5 bags of gold and not corrupt you. But you, I can only give you 2 because this is what's best for you. And for you, I know you. I'm just going to give you 1. Right? So he's giving each person according to his intimate knowledge of his servants. So already in this story, the way that Jesus told this story, we already know something about this master. This master has an intimate knowledge of the people that works for him. Okay? And remember, even though you get just 1 bag of gold, that's a lot of money. You could survive the rest of your life on it. You're going to be fine, right? The master cares more about the person than the money. Okay? Now, second thing I want you to pay attention to here is, the last line here is, then he went on his journey. There's something missing from this story that we might assume is there, which is the master never gave instructions to his servants. Did you notice that? He's like, here you go, here you go, here you go, peace out, and just left, and they're wondering like, what are we supposed to do with this stuff? Right? Like, for those of you who are familiar with this story, maybe you thought there's like a verse in there that we might have missed something, but no, the master gives 0 instructions on what you're supposed to do here. So, let's see what happens to these servants who don't know what they're supposed to do. Okay, so let's see what they do. The man who had received 5 bags of gold went at once. Like, he wasn't giving any instructions, but he knew immediately what he was supposed to do. It's almost like, I know my master so well that even if he doesn't tell me what to do with it, I kind of intuitively know what I'm supposed to do, right? At once, he put his money to work and gained 5 more bags. So also the one with 2 bags also had that intimate knowledge of his master. And so he knew intuitively what to do. And so, but the man who had received 1 bag went off and dug a hole in the ground and hid his master's money. So their actions matched their intimate knowledge of the one that they called friend. In this case, servant doesn't mean slave. It means like an employee type of relationship. So let's look at this diagram. And as a result, the first guy doubles his money to 10 bags, 4 bags, and then the last guy doesn't do anything with it, right? So what do we know so far about this story? What do we know so far? This is what we know. Servant A and B intuitively knew what to do on behalf of the master, even without instructions. So already this far into the story, you're like, okay, this is not what I thought this story is going to be about, but this is what it is about, right? And what we also learned from the story so far is this, that the servant's actions matched their understanding of the master's character. Like, we just got his money. Well, if I were him, I would do this. In order to say that, you have to know who your master is, right? So they go out and do what they think that the master would do with the money. Then the next verse is this. A long time passes. It's not like 1 or 2 days or a week. When they say long time, we're talking about a year. So for a year, these 2 servants are working hard to double the amount of money that the master gave them. And that also means that servant C, for an entire year, he's just sitting on his bum doing nothing. He's just like, I buried it, I'm just going to relax and just lying down, right? He's not doing anything here for a whole year, maybe longer. We don't know what that long time is, okay? And, if the master showed up the next day and said, why are you just sitting there? He could say like, oh, I was just so busy, I didn't have time. They're like, no, you had a long time. I was gone for a long time. So the word long time here does a lot of work here. It tells you that like they have no excuse because they had the time to do it. They had the time to figure it out. They had time to do anything that they intended to do, right? So let's keep reading. The master came back and he settled accounts with them. Settling accounts here means he came back to take a look and debrief with them, right? To see like, I don't know if you guys knew this, but this was actually an experiment. And I'm here to find out how the experiment went. So he's here to find out if the test is actually working. Okay. The man who had received 5 bags of gold brought the other 5. Master, you entrusted me with 5 bags of gold. See, I have gained 5 more. Now, do you think the master cares about how much money he's actually made? Because so far in the story, what we know about this master is that he cares more about the development of his people than he cares about the money he has or how much money they made. Let's keep going. His master replied, well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful with a few things. Again, be modest, like few things. 5 bags of gold is a lot of stuff, right? I will put you in charge of many things. You have shown me that 5 bags of gold has not corrupted you. As a matter of fact, you treated the 5 bags of gold in the way that I would treat it, right? And you've done something good with it. So now I'm going to give you more. Now, you're going to discover at the end of the story that he doesn't want his money back. He's like, this is yours to keep. So we know that this master is also generous. He's not doing this so that he could get rich, like even more rich than he already is. He cares about people more than he cares about his wealth, right? So he says, come and share your master's happiness. Like, do you understand how happy I am to see your growth? Like, this is you a few years ago, and this is you who you are now, and you have this growth happened because you know me so well, right? And so he's like, this is so cool. I'm so happy. I'm overjoyed, and I hope that you feel the same way. That's what's happening here. So, next verse. The man with 2 bags of gold does the same thing. Master, you've entrusted me with 2 bags of gold. See, I've gained 2 more. His master replied, well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful with a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Come and share your master's happiness. Oh, you get it. You totally get it, servant B. I love that you get it. But notice he doesn't compare him to the first. It's like, well, servant A, he got 5 bags of gold in the time that I was gone. You only got me 2? No, he doesn't compare. He understands the way that you are in your world, that is a lot of work. And that is a big win. If I compare you to somebody else, it might not seem like that, but because all I care about is who you are and who you're meant to be and your capacity and your level of ethics and morality and how money could corrupt you or whatever. He's like, in your own way, you've done your best and I've seen a lot of growth. I'm so happy. Come and join me in celebrating the kind of man that you turned into. Okay? Now let's see what happens next. The master cares about joy and growth of his servants. That's the primary thing here. And the point was never about master getting richer. That was never the point. Okay. And like I said, we know this because he gives away his money at the end of the story, right? And next, we're going to talk about servant C. Now, servant C does something that the first 2 doesn't. He dares to define who the master is. Let's take a look at that. Then the man who received the 1 bag of gold came and he said, Master, I knew that you are a hard man. Like, he's like, let me tell you, like probably pointing his finger, right? It's like, Master, let me tell you who I think you are. As a matter of fact, I know this is who you are. When he says hard man, he's saying, I know that you're a stubborn person. I know that you are unmoving. I know that you're merciless. I know that you're stingy. He's basically saying, I know you're a jerk. Now, have we read something so far in the story that points to the fact that he's a jerk, that he's a hard man? No. But this man, this third servant, servant C, he's convinced that this is who the master is. So he says, so because I knew that that's who you are, and let me give you an example of that. Go back. Harvesting where you have not sown and gathering where you have not scattered seed. In other words, what he's saying is, you're rich. And you know what? All rich people are the same. You see, because you're rich, I know that you're the kind of person that wants to do the minimum amount of work and reap the most benefit from it. I know you're really strict. So that means if you gave me just a little bit, like 1 bag of gold, and I know all you care about is how much money I make for you. Well, I was scared. I was afraid because you're really strict. So, and you demand perfection from me. So what I did was I put it in the ground so that it's safe, because that way I can't mess up, right? And then a year later when he came back, I dug it out and he gave it back to you, right? So it tells you right here, he's like, I was afraid. Next verse. So I was afraid and went out and hid your gold in the ground. See, here it is what belongs to you. He was scared. He's like, it's because of you that I did this. It's because I know you're a strict person that I did this. And so here you go. Now, from what we know in the story, servant C totally misunderstands the character of the master. Now, this is the part where I was channeling my 90s sitcom stuff. So most of you guys don't understand 90s sitcom unless you watch old TV shows. Do you guys know? Okay, and sitcoms, they're like supposed to be funny, but every once in a while there's this episode that gets serious all of a sudden. You know what I'm talking about? And then it's like usually between the dad and the son, and and the son does something really, really dumb, right? Something idiotic, but he does it because he misunderstood who the father was. And so the son is like, Dad, I did this for you. And then the music plays. Usually in sitcoms, music don't play, but like music plays for this scene, right? And he's like, you see, son, you can just imagine music playing. You see, son, just because I'm rich doesn't mean that money is more than important than you. You are the reason, right? You know what I'm talking about? Like, is that meaningful, right? And the laughing audience like disappears in the background, and then, right? It's like, I left money with you so that, to see how well you knew me. And it's like, oh, Dad, I'm so sorry. It's like, it's okay, come here, son. And then everybody starts clapping. You know what I'm talking about? Half of you know what I'm talking about. Okay. This is what this scene is setting up. At this point in the parable, as Jesus is telling it, his audience is expecting, oh, this is the part where the master says, come here, son, give me a hug. You know that's not who I am. Look, I'm a generous person. Take a look at everything I've done, right? But that doesn't happen in this story. There's a twist in this story, and the twist in this story is that the master doesn't say, did I come off to you as a scary person? Oh, I'm sorry. I'm actually a very loving person. That's not what happens. Instead, he says, He says this, servant C wasn't just afraid of the master. He's like, you said you were afraid of me? Oh, I'm so sorry. No. That's not what happens in the story. The master goes on to say, servant C, well, you think I'm evil, don't you? What? Wait, what? Right, well, let's look at the verse. His master replied, you wicked, lazy servant. You knew, meaning, this is what you believed about me? You knew that I harvest where I have not sown and gather where I have not scattered seed? So you were afraid of me? That's why you did this? Well, if that were true, well then, you should have put my money on deposit with the bankers. Because when you put money in the bank, over time, it accumulates interest, and you could probably have another bag of gold at the end of the year. So that when I returned, I would have received my back with interest. If what you said is true, if you're really afraid of me, then you should have put it in the bank. Now, there's a word that we probably overlooked here, but next slide. It's the word here, wicked. The word wicked here means evil. He says, you think I'm evil, and therefore you acted out in evil. So there's something that's culturally that we're not catching here. So I want to show you this is from a scholar, Timothy Mackey. In a culture that places value on both honor and shame, the servant publicly expressed his opinion by stating, my opinion of you is reflected in my actions with your money, which is nothing. This is what he's saying. He's saying, okay, if I was a servant, do you want to know what I think of you? Nothing. So you know what I did with your money? Nothing. This is very, very insulting. So in front of the two other servants, he's basically saying, I think you're evil. I think you're like every other rich person that I met. And that's why I just dug a hole and buried it and gave it back to you. Because I don't think that you're a good person. That is a statement that this servant's making, right? This is ultimate disrespect. It's highly offensive. So the master is like, you think I'm a hard person? You think I'm evil? Well, in that case, so take the bag of gold from him and give it to the one who has 10 bags. You don't think I'm generous? Watch, I'm going to be generous right now, right? For whoever has will be given more, and they have an abundance. Whoever does not have, well, even what they have will be taken from them. So here it's implied, you think I want this money back from you guys? No. I did this so I could give money away to you guys. You think I'm stingy? No, I'm actually very generous. So, and it's after that, this verse comes, and throw that worthless servant outside into the darkness, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. So what does that mean? What does weeping and gnashing of teeth mean? Next slide. Okay, what does this mean? So here's from a Bible dictionary. This is what it says. The underlying reason for weeping is often the loss of an opportunity rather than physical pain. So for people who translate weeping and gnashing of teeth with hell, right, you often imagine that the reason that you're weeping is because you're burning in fire, and you're like, oh, it's so hot, oh, it's burning my skin, and you start weeping. There's nothing in the Bible that suggests that the weeping comes from physical pain. It comes from this regret of, I should not have done that. Had I made the right choice here, I would be living that life. And you're crying, right? That's what the word weeping here implies. And about the gnashing of teeth, well, it consistently signifies regretful anger directed towards the giver or recipient of kindness. Have you ever been in that situation where you work really hard for something or towards something, but somebody reaps the benefit and they're living the life? And you're like, they didn't do anything wrong to me, but I just don't like that guy. You know what I'm talking about? Like, why is that person more beautiful than me? Or like, why does that person have a nicer car? Or why does that person, have like better kids or better whatever, right? Or in some cases, you're angry at God. Why did God bless that person but not me? That anger that's inside of you, when it leaks out into your facial expression, that's the phrase gnashing of teeth. You're like, oh, I can't believe it. The master here is saying, what you're doing right there, what you believe about who I am, my character, is so off. Your life is going to be filled with regret. Had you known that I was a generous person, you would have acted accordingly, and you could be joining in my happiness like I am with the other two servants. And when you see these two guys living the life that you wish you were living, you're going to be looking at that thinking, oh, I don't like those guys. They didn't do anything wrong to you, but you just don't like those guys because they're living the life that you wanted to live. That's what weeping and gnashing of teeth means. Okay, so in this context, the servant who did not intimately know the master was filled with anger towards those who got it right. That's what this parable is about. So, Matthew 25, 14 through 30. We thought it was about a parable about going to hell if you are not using your talents for good. Like, you have the talent of juggling. You're not juggling for Jesus, you're going to hell. I mean, that's basically what I think a lot of people interpret this verse as. But what we learned is that is not what this is about. Rather, it's a parable warning us about having a distorted view of the master and what we could miss out on. Servants A and B intuitively knew what to do because of what they knew about the master. I spent enough time with my master to a point where I just feel in my bones this is what he would want me to do. Remember, in the Old Testament, there were laws or rules that you're supposed to follow. In this situation, do this. In this situation, don't do that. But now they're living in a world where those laws feel outdated, right? Like, back then there were laws about what you can and you can't eat, right? There were laws about what you're supposed to do in your free time. I mean, have you thought about like riding a bicycle? Is there a law in the Bible about that? No. You're supposed to intuitively know what you're supposed to do because you have a relationship with the master. The master is not going to be there to tell you what to do every step of the way. You have to just know from your experience with God, with your master, what you're supposed to do in each situation. And these guys knew what to do. Servants A and B did the right thing because they had an intimate knowledge of the master, and the master had an intimate knowledge of them. But servant C, the third guy, had the wrong view of his master. And because of that, he acted wrong. The unfaithful servant is imprisoned in darkness by his own version of his master. He's thinking, that master is a jerk. That master is out to get me. The first time I make a mistake, he's going to strike me with lightning, right? If I make the wrong investment, he's never going to trust me again. Like, I need to be perfect. Otherwise, my master's going to be angry with me. Or my master is just waiting for the day I mess up so that he could call me out on it. These are the thoughts that servant C had playing in his mind. And because of that, he acted in the way that he did. But the other two were like, even if I invest or I do the wrong thing with this money, my master is still going to reward me because he loves me. And that freed them up to do what they were doing. And that's why the master embraced them and said, come and join me in my happiness. Next point here is his false reality of the master was leaking into the way he lived his daily life. And sometimes, as I was like reading this, and I was thinking about like, man, like, is this relevant today? I mean, are there a lot of people in our country today that think that who God is like not the God that we read in the Bible, but a God who is hungry for power? He's so hungry for power that it gives us justification to do whatever we have to get as much power as we can. Like, have we fallen prey to this view of God that the only reason God exists is just to bless me? Just me. Even if it hurts other people, all that matters is that God blesses me. Or have we fallen prey to this image of a God that the way he blesses people is only through riches? So that when the way that leaks out into our daily life is when we see a poor person, we think, oh, that person must have done something wrong. God must hate that person. Because that view of their neighbor leaked out in the first century in the New Testament. His disciples would look at somebody who can't walk and say, hey, Lord, is that person, I think he was blind. Is that person blind because he sinned or was it his parents who sinned? And Jesus is like, neither. Like, what are you talking about? But because they had this false view of who God is, they started treating people and started looking at people in different ways. Do we believe that Jesus is white? Because if you believe that, then you could start to disregard the other races around you, right? Do we believe that, that like whatever your view of God is, it's going to eventually come out in ways that are not flattering? In ways, according to Jesus, it's going to come out in ways where one day you're going to be living a life full of regret. Missed opportunities. Why didn't I do it this way? Why didn't I see Jesus the right way? When you reject Jesus, this is another thing that came to my mind. Have you rejected Jesus because you were taught a false version of him? I've been a pastor for almost 20 years now, and I've heard a lot of stories of why people don't like church or don't like God. And a lot of them is stuff like this. I cannot follow a God who is homophobic. I cannot follow a Jesus that is super strict and ruins the fun, and he's drunk on power. And I'm like, I don't think I believe in that God either. I don't want to follow him either, right? But there's a false version of God that's floating around out there, right? And sometimes that false version of God is being worshipped in churches. And so when people are rejecting God, I have to ask the question, which version of God are you rejecting? Because if you read the first century texts about Jesus, like Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, and all the letters that Paul wrote, what you discover is that people who looked nothing like Jesus liked Jesus. They were like, we will follow this guy. We don't, like, nobody thought Jesus was a jerk when he was walking this earth. People who were sinners, people who were like indebted, people who were cast out of society were attracted to Jesus. And I wonder, does the church have that same reputation today? And if not, maybe we are worshiping a false Jesus. Maybe we're like servant C, where we make assumptions about who Jesus is and we discover that's not who he really is. That's what this parable is about. How well are we living our lives? Because that is a reflection of who we believe Jesus to be. Amen? All right, let's pray.